Ahoj všichni. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jen and I make videos about what it's like to be a foreigner living in Prague, Czechia. Now, I grew up in Los Angeles and I've been living in Czech Republic for 9 years. And so in this video, I wanted to talk about the ways that I spend a lot less money here, but my quality of life is a lot better. Now, these are all personal observations, and I don't have any personal knowledge of the quality of life in Topeka, Kansas, or in Ostrava. Those aren't my experiences, but I am quite familiar with the big cities in California and, of course, Prague. And so today I thought I'd share that comparison with you. So when we speak about quality of life, I think the thing that comes to mind, for most Americans at least, is how much you're able to earn. Therefore, how much you're able to spend. So the average salary in California is around $65,000 US per year, and the average salary in Prague is about $20,000 per year. And those are both the most expensive places to live in their respective countries. If you tell a Californian, you should move to Prague because you'll have an even better quality of life, and then you tell them the average salary, they're gonna be like, how does less money equal a better quality of life? So for this video, I want you to try to put salaries out of your mind. Try to put that American way of thinking out of your head and try to think about what you enjoy doing and how you enjoy spending your time. So the first thing that has made my quality of life better here in Czechia is that consumer goods are a lot more expensive. Wait, what? I just told you that you're gonna earn less money here and consumer goods are going to be more expensive. And this made your life better. How? Well, here's how. I had a salary job in the US and I had to be at my desk from 9 to 6, often much later than that, Monday through Friday. And by the time the weekend came, I was so exhausted that I had no energy to do anything, many weeks. And so I would sort of make myself feel better with retail therapy. And I'd walk down to Santa Monica Promenade and I'd spend a couple $100s on a new bag or shoes or clothes or something else I didn't really need, hoping it would make me feel better. I just thought, this is what you do. You grow up, you get a real job, and then you're miserable, and then you have a lot of money to spend on things. But because consumer goods are more expensive in Czechia, I've sort of curbed my spending habits and I really don't buy a lot of unnecessary things. So if I really want something, I'll kind of wait several weeks and make sure that it is something I really want to spend the money on. But I've mostly weaned myself off of the habit to buy something to make me feel better about my crappy week. The next one is that I work as a freelancer in this country. Being a freelancer also improved my quality of life, even though I'm making less money than I would if I had a full-time salaried position. So most Czechs work as full-time employees here, but there is a freelancer option, and that means that you can work for several companies, and then you pay for your own Social Security and you pay for your own healthcare. For the first 5 years, I worked as an English teacher at several schools and I had several private students, and I was working a lot, like a typical American. And then I realized I'd actually rather have free time than more money. But because I was a freelancer and I didn't have one corporation that employed me, I was able to say, I'm gonna cut my hours here, I'm gonna reduce my hours here, and I sort of bought back my time because I was okay not making more money. It's rare in the United States to find some sort of part-time work, mainly only in the service industry, like working for restaurants or as a shopkeeper. And there's also a bit of a stigma that here I am, educated with a well-paying job. Why would I ever try to work part-time? The goal is always to make as much money as you possibly can. So the way that this has improved my quality of life is that I'm a naturally creative person, and this allowed me the time to do the things I wanted to do. I love designing jewelry, I love drawing, and I love making these videos. And so this entire Dream Prague project could only happen because I had allowed myself that time to focus on my creative pursuits. And living in California, I just simply couldn't afford to work part-time. So I'm definitely more creatively fulfilled here. Even though my husband and I don't spend as much money now on consumer goods, we do love to spend our disposable income on going to restaurants and pubs. Going out in California was sort of a rare treat, and so you would go to a fancy restaurant and you would think to yourself, well, I only go out once every couple of weeks or once a week, so I'm gonna get the expensive glass of wine and maybe another. I'll get the dessert too. There's this feeling of, well, when am I gonna do this again? So I might as well treat myself, especially if you've worked at your hard job all week. And so you leave a restaurant with like $100 bill. Whereas here, it's much more normal to go out with friends for lunch or to grab simply a beer at a pub that you end up with a bill of like 50 or 80 crowns, which is like a few dollars. Living in Prague, we definitely spend less money on vacations, and we definitely travel to more interesting places more frequently. So Prague is basically the center of Europe, and in 2 hours you can be in a slew of other countries, and we have excellent transport. We've got cheap trains and cheap luxury buses that can take you all over Europe. With the exception of the northeast part of the United States, we don't have good long-distance public transportation. You pretty much have to buy a plane ticket anytime you want to travel outside your city. But the biggest difference between the two cultures is not about how cheap it is to travel, but it's more about the vacation mentality. So let me put you into the mind of a vacationing American. In order to even afford a vacation, you have to have a pretty good paying job, and you probably should have one with paid vacation. A lot of jobs in the US do not offer paid vacation. And even higher paying jobs only offer about 2 weeks of vacation time a year. So there's this feeling of, we need to spend the 2 weeks well. We need to really treat ourselves. For the luckiest Americans who can afford it, they would go to some tropical island like Hawaii or maybe the Bahamas. And a lot of people who can afford it love to come to Europe. And when they get there, they don't want to skimp, right? They want to upgrade their hotel room, maybe have breakfast in bed. They want their kids to have the most amazing experience, so they'll pay for all the tours. Instead of buying a metro ticket to take them around Paris or Berlin, they'll buy the 60 euro hop-on, hop-off tour because they want to get the real experience. And at some point during this glorious 2 weeks, they will have to pull out their credit cards because they probably will have blown through the budget that they'd set for this vacation. And so a lot of Americans end up going into debt. This is really weird for Europeans to understand, but a lot of Americans use credit cards and they just carry a debt of thousands of dollars that they only pay like $100 each month. And they will put their vacation cost on that credit card. So not only were they saving up for the vacation, but they will be paying off the vacation for months, maybe even years. On the other hand, vacation time is built into Czech culture. They get 4 weeks of paid vacation a year, and they use it very wisely. The Czechs are big travelers. Actually, my Czech and Slovak friends are even more well-traveled than most of my American friends. But they travel economically. There's a Czech stereotype that if you're driving through Europe and you see a car that's packed to the brim with like food and rolik and like beer, it probably has a Czech license plate. Because the Czechs bring with them whatever they're gonna need on their vacation. And the Czechs love to go to Croatia, and there's also a stereotype of the Croatian restaurateur rolling their eyes when the Czechs show up because they know they're not going to buy any food from them. But there's a lot of lessons to take away from this sort of Czech cliche, and that's you don't need to break the bank to go and have a lovely time on vacation. So for example, we don't go on sort of massive 2-week vacations anymore. We do a lot of 3 to 4 to 5 day trips in other European countries. And instead of sitting in St. Mark's Square in Venice and overpaying for what's probably a not good Italian meal, we go and find the little alleyway osteria where you can buy the cicchetti, the little snacks, and you can buy a glass of Italian wine for like €2. It's amazing, and you're surrounded by sort of the Italians who work in the shops after they close, so you're not even really around the tourists. But because you have this budget mindset, you're not gonna do the big, expensive tourist things, and you probably get more of a taste of the real culture because you're spending like an Italian would spend. I used to feel almost panicked about vacation when I was a young professional in America, and I really didn't take that many, but I always wanted to come to Europe. I used to think, how can I ever afford to go to Europe? And what 3 countries can I possibly squeeze in? How can I possibly choose? Because I can't afford to go to more than that. There's this feeling of, I can only do this once in a decade, and so I'm gonna save up as much money as I can, and I'm gonna treat myself to everything when I go there. And so when you live in the center of Europe, you know you're gonna go back to Venice. You'll probably go to Rome a few times, the Netherlands, and you start hitting the other cities that aren't the big flashy capitals. Instead of Paris, you might go to Nice, or instead of Brussels, you might go to Bruges, and it really opens up your opportunities because it's not once every 5 years that you're coming here. It's maybe a few times a year you're traveling. In fact, in 2019, I went to 12 different countries, and I was really exhausted, but it was possible. Okay, with the exception of New York and Chicago, it is almost impossible for Americans to get around without cars. We don't have the public transportation infrastructure, and you pretty much just have to have a car, especially in California. And cars are expensive. There's insurance and gas, and you kind of have to have a good car. I mean, you don't, but this is like, keeping up with the Joneses. Everybody wants what everybody else has, and so it's very expensive to have a car. In Prague, it is totally possible. In fact, it's preferable to not have a car. A year-long public transit pass will get you buses, trams, and metros for $175 a year. It's safe, it's clean, and it's everywhere you look, so you're not like searching for a place to jump on a tram. And if you want to leave Prague, I've already told you about the train and the bus options, so you really don't need a car here. Another thing I spend less on is fitness. So I have never been a gym rat, but in Los Angeles, I paid for an expensive gym membership, and I never went. But you kind of feel like if you don't pay for a membership, you're just accepting that you're like a fat slob that doesn't want to work out. So you pay for the gym membership and then you never go. In Prague, when I moved here, I started walking more, and that is mainly due to public transportation. Even though it's very convenient to find tram and metro stops, you just end up getting your 10,000 steps like that. And in America, gosh, it was hard to get like 3,000 steps. Now, of course, you can join gyms here in Prague, but what I chose to do was to start running. And I'm a terrible runner, but I love being a runner in Prague because every route you take is so scenic, and I post a lot about it on my Instagram reels if you want to check those out. And then I started getting really inspired by running, and so I signed up for marathons and half marathons in different countries around Europe, which was a totally awesome excuse to spend a 4 to 5 day vacation in another country. So instead of paying gym fees every month, I have paid for new sneakers and some running pants and a few race tokens, but that's it. So I spend a lot less money on fitness here, but I'm a lot more fit. And the last thing that I spend less money on, but get a lot more value out of, is my social time with friends. So we're just pulling out of the sort of lockdown pandemic, and restaurants aren't open yet, but they've opened sort of for takeaway, and you can drink on the streets, and there are a few tables you can sit outside. And so in the past week, here are the social events that Hansa and I have done. We have played games in people's homes, like board games. We met a girlfriend of mine down the street to get glasses of Prosecco, which were like $3, glasses of Prosecco, and then we went into Namistimiru, the local square, sat on a couple of benches and just like enjoyed the nice weather and drank. We met some new friends outside of a bottle shop in Yerzak, Beer Geek, and there wasn't anywhere to sit even, but we just kind of stood outside and talked and made some new friends. And today we spent 4 hours with a couple of friends on our Sunday walk, which was walking through Žižkov, exploring new parts of the river and Karlin that we hadn't seen before. And all through pandemic, we were with them on Sundays, sort of exploring new parks and finding a sort of outdoor way to have fun together. In LA, to get together with friends, we would have to go to a restaurant that was quite expensive or get brunch or something like that. There's not a lot of outdoor space where people spend time. If they do, it's at like an outdoor shopping mall. So there's always this implied spending of money. We of course have the beach, but you have to pay like $10 to park there. And it's kind of a hassle to actually get to the beach because there's like a highway right there. So not to mention the fact that everybody lived so far away that if your friend lived, a few miles, let's say 5 kilometers away, it could take you 45 minutes to get there by car. So you really have to be committed to make a plan to see a friend. And here, I can't tell you how many times I just bump into someone and they're going up to the beer garden and I say, yeah, I'll come along. It's almost like living on a big university campus. That's how small it feels sometimes, that you just run into your friends all the time. And there's this level of unpretension about what a friend gathering is. It doesn't have to be this reservation at a fancy restaurant. It doesn't have to be a Saturday night of drinking in the city center. It's so much easier than that. It's anything from a coffee to a cocktail to just let's take our dogs to the park together. And it costs almost nothing, but I find that my friends are not only a part of my weekends, but they're a part of my evenings too. So I would say on average, I see 5 to 6 friends per week, and that just unfortunately didn't happen in Los Angeles. So these are just a few of the ways that I feel the quality of life is better in Prague than the life I had in Los Angeles. And it's kind of amazing because it has nothing to do with spending more money. It has nothing to do with earning more money. So I hope that I was able to convince you to sort of stop thinking about quality of life in terms of how much money you make or how much disposable income you have, but more about what you're actually able to do in your life and who you're able to be around and how creative you're able to be and basically what your day-to-day looks like. Thanks for watching. Uvidíme se příští týden. Ahoj!